The clock on the community center wall read 4:47 p.m. when Nia finally packed up her things. She'd spent the last 3 hours helping younger kids with their homework, something she did every Tuesday and Thursday after school. Her backpack felt heavier than usual, stuffed with textbooks, her laptop, and the half-eaten sandwich she'd forgotten about during lunch. She pushed through the double doors and stepped into the late afternoon sun. October in Riverside was her favorite time of year. The air had that perfect coolness that made you want to wear a hoodie but didn't quite need a jacket yet. She pulled her navy blue hoodie over her head, tucked her braids inside, and slipped in her earbuds. The walk home was about 20 minutes if she took her time. Nia didn't mind. It gave her space to think, to decompress from the noise of teenagers asking questions and the constant buzz of activity at the center. Today her mind was spinning with college application deadlines. Early decision papers were due in 3 weeks, and she still hadn't finished her personal essay. She turned onto Riverside Avenue, the street that wound through one of the nicer parts of town. Tall oak trees lined both sides, their leaves just starting to turn orange and gold. The houses here were the kind you'd see in magazines. Big front lawns, 2-car garages, perfect flower beds that someone definitely paid good money to maintain. Nia had walked this route 100 times. Her family's house was at the end of this street, right where it curved into Maple Drive. She knew every crack in the sidewalk, every house with the barking dog, every neighbor who waved from their porch. But today felt different somehow. She noticed the patrol car before it noticed her. It was cruising slowly down the street, the kind of slow that meant they weren't really going anywhere. Just watching, she felt that familiar tightness in her chest, the one her parents had warned her about. If you see police, her father had said more times than she could count, you keep your hands visible. You stay calm. You do exactly what they say. Nia kept walking, trying to look normal, whatever normal was supposed to look like. She adjusted her backpack straps and focused on the music in her ears. Just 3 more blocks. 3 more blocks and she'd be home. The patrol car slowed down even more. She could feel their eyes on her now. Her heart started beating faster. Why were they looking at her? She wasn't doing anything wrong. She was literally just walking home. Then she heard it. The quick burst of the siren just once, enough to make her jump and yank out her earbuds. The car pulled up beside her, rolling slowly to match her pace. Nia stopped walking. Her hands started to shake, and she shoved them into her hoodie pocket before anyone could see. 2 officers got out. The first one was tall, probably in his 40s, with a thin mustache and eyes that seemed to be judging her before he even spoke. The second officer was younger, stockier, with his hand resting casually on his belt near his radio. "Afternoon," the older officer said. His badge read Davidson. "Can we talk to you for a minute?" Nia swallowed hard. Okay. What's this about?" "We're just checking the area. We've had some reports of suspicious activity in this neighborhood." Officer Davidson took a step closer. "What are you doing around here?" The question hit her like a slap. What was she doing here? She lived here. "I'm walking home," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I live down the street." The younger officer, whose badge said Mills, raised an eyebrow. "You live in this neighborhood?" There was something in the way he said it. Like he didn't believe her. Like someone who looked like her couldn't possibly belong in a neighborhood like this. "Yes, sir," Nia replied. "My house is right up the street." "On Maple Drive." Officer Davidson crossed his arms. "Maple Drive?" "That's interesting. Because we know most of the families around here and I don't recall seeing you before." Nia felt anger bubbling up beneath her fear. She wanted to scream that she'd lived here for 3 years. That she walked this street almost every day, that her father's name was literally on a sign in front of their house. But she remembered her parents' warnings. Don't argue. Don't raise your voice. Don't give them a reason. "I've lived here for 3 years," she said quietly. "I was just at the community center. I volunteer there on Tuesdays and Thursdays." "Community center?" Officer Mills looked at his partner. "That's what, 4 miles from here?" "About that," Davidson nodded. "Long walk for a volunteer shift." "I like walking," Nia said, feeling her palms start to sweat. "It's not that far. Got any ID on you?" Davidson asked. My driver's license is at home." "I don't drive." "I'm only 17. The 2 officers exchanged a look. Nia had seen that look before. It was the look adults gave each other when they thought a kid was lying. "No ID?" Mills stepped closer now too. "That's convenient." "I'm not lying," Nia said, her voice getting higher despite herself. I really do live here. My name is Nia Thompson. My family lives at 847 Maple Drive. Thompson? Davidson pulled out a small notebook. And what are your parents' names? Nia hesitated. She didn't want to say it. She didn't want to use her father's position as some kind of shield. She wanted these officers to treat her with respect because she was a person, because she deserved it, not because of who her father was. My dad is James Thompson. My mom is Angela Thompson. Neither officer reacted to the names. Davidson just scribbled something in his notebook. Okay, Nia Thompson, he said. Since you don't have any ID, we're going to need to verify your story. Mind if we take a look in your bag? Her stomach dropped. My bag? Why? Like I said, we've had reports of break-ins in the area. Just need to make sure you're not carrying anything that doesn't belong to you. I told you I live here. I'm not breaking into anything. Then you shouldn't have any problem showing us what's in the bag, Mills said. Nia's mind raced. She knew her rights. She'd had that conversation with her parents, too. They couldn't search her without probable cause. But she also knew what happened to people who said no to police officers. She'd seen the videos. She'd heard the stories. Her hand trembled as she reached for her phone in her pocket. What are you doing? Davidson's voice got sharp. I'm getting my phone. I want to record this. You don't need to record anything. We're just having a conversation. I have the right to record, Nia said, surprised at how firm her voice sounded despite the fear coursing through her body. It's legal. She held up her phone and pressed record. The camera captured both officers, the patrol car, the quiet street behind them. Officer Davidson's jaw clenched. Put the phone away. No, sir. I'm allowed to record. You're interfering with police business. I'm standing here answering your questions. I'm not interfering with anything. Mills moved closer, his hand still near his belt. The officer asked you to put the phone down. Nia's heart was pounding so hard she thought it might burst out of her chest. But she kept the phone up, kept it recording. This was her protection. This was her proof. I'm not putting it down, she said. If you want to search my bag, you can, but I'm recording it. A door opened across the street. Then another. Neighbors were coming out, drawn by the sound of raised voices and the sight of a patrol car stopped in the middle of the road. Mrs. Chen from 2 houses down called out, Is everything okay? Police business, ma'am. Davidson called back without taking his eyes off Nia. Please go back inside. But Mrs. Chen didn't go inside. Instead, she pulled out her own phone and started recording. Then Mr. Patel came out from next door. Then the Rodriguez family from across the street. One by one, neighbors emerged, and Nia realized they all recognized her. They'd seen her walk the street 100 times. They'd waved to her, said hello, asked about school, and now they were watching 2 police officers treat her like a criminal in her own neighborhood. Officer, Mr. Patel said, walking closer. That's the Thompson girl. She lives right down the street. Davidson barely glanced at him. Sir, I need you to step back. I'm just telling you, she lives here. Her father is... I know who her father is, Davidson snapped, though his face suggested he absolutely did not know. That doesn't change the fact that we're conducting an investigation. Investigation of what? Mrs. Chen demanded. She's walking home from the community center. She does it twice a week. More phones came out. More cameras pointed at the scene. Nia kept her own phone steady, though her whole arm was shaking now. Officer Mills spoke into his radio, calling for backup. Nia's blood went cold. Backup? Why did they need backup? She hadn't done anything. This is ridiculous, she heard herself say. I'm 17 years old. I'm walking home. I haven't broken any laws. Why are you doing this? But she knew why. Deep down, she knew exactly why. It was the same reason she'd been followed in stores. The same reason teachers sometimes seemed surprised when she got good grades. The same reason people crossed the street when they saw her coming. She knew why, and it made her want to cry and scream at the same time. 2 more patrol cars pulled up, lights flashing. 4 more officers stepped out. Nia was now surrounded by 6 police officers in the middle of her own street, with half her neighborhood watching and recording, and all she'd been trying to do was walk home from helping kids with their homework. The afternoon sun was getting lower now, casting long shadows across the pavement. Nia thought about her college essay, the one about overcoming challenges. She wondered if this would be in it. She wondered if she'd even get the chance to finish. One of the new officers approached her. Miss, we're going to need you to come with us to verify your identity. I told you who I am. I told you where I live. My neighbors are right here telling you they know me. What more do you want? We need proper identification. So you're going to arrest me for walking while black? The words came out before she could stop them. The officer's expression hardened. Watch your tone. Nia felt tears starting to burn in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of these officers who were making her feel like less than human. She kept her phone up. She kept recording. And she waited for whatever was going to happen next, knowing that nothing about this day had been fair, knowing that nothing about this situation made any sense, and knowing that somewhere at the end of this street, her parents were probably wondering why she wasn't home yet. Officer Davidson noticed Nia's phone first, and something in his face changed. It wasn't the calm, professional look anymore. Now there was irritation, maybe even anger. I said, "Put that phone away," he repeated, taking a step toward her. "You're interfering with an official investigation." Nia's arm ached from holding the phone up, but she didn't lower it. "I'm not interfering. I'm standing still. I'm just recording." "That's interfering," Officer Mills chimed in. "You're creating a distraction and refusing to cooperate with a lawful order. Since when is recording illegal?" Mrs. Chen shouted from across the street. She was still filming too, her phone held high above her head. "Leave that girl alone." More neighbors had gathered now. At least 15 people stood on lawns and sidewalks watching the scene unfold. Most of them had their phones out. The whole thing was being captured from multiple angles, and Nia felt both grateful and terrified. Grateful because there would be proof of whatever happened next. Terrified because she was starting to realize this wasn't going to end well. Officer Davidson moved quickly, reaching for Nia's backpack. "We're conducting a search." "Wait, no." Nia tried to step back, but Mills was suddenly behind her, blocking her path. "Don't move," Mills warned. "Keep your hands where we can see them." "I am." "Look, my hands are right here." Nia's voice cracked. She was still holding her phone in one hand, her other hand spread out at her side. "I'm not doing anything wrong." Davidson grabbed the backpack strap and started pulling it off her shoulder. Nia instinctively held on, not to resist, but just because it was her stuff. Her laptop was in there, her homework, her college applications. "She's resisting," Mills shouted, and suddenly his hand was on her arm, gripping tight. "I'm not. I'm just—" But her words got lost in the chaos. The other 4 officers moved in closer, forming a circle around her. Nia's heart felt like it was going to explode. She couldn't breathe right. Everything was happening too fast. "Let go of the bag," Davidson commanded. Nia released the strap immediately, her hands shooting up in the air. The phone nearly fell, but she managed to keep holding it, still recording everything. Davidson yanked the backpack off and dropped it on the ground. He unzipped it roughly, pulling things out and tossing them onto the sidewalk. Her textbooks hit the concrete with heavy thuds. Her notebook pages fluttered in the slight breeze. Her lunch container rolled into the grass. "This is insane." Mr. Patel was walking closer now, his phone pointed at the officers. "Her father is going to hear about this." "Sir, back up," one of the new officers ordered. "This is your final warning." "What's your badge number?" Mr. Patel demanded. "I want all your badge numbers." "Mine too," Mrs. Chen added. "This is harassment. That child hasn't done anything." But the officers ignored them. Davidson pulled out Nia's laptop, examined it, then set it on the hood of the patrol car. He found her wallet, flipped it open. Nia watched as he looked at her school ID, her library card, her debit card. "This says you're a student at Riverside High," Davidson said. "Yes, that's what I've been telling you." Nia's voice was getting higher, more desperate. "I go to Riverside High. I live down the street. This is my neighborhood." "Riverside High is a public school," Mills observed. "Most kids in this neighborhood go to private schools." The implication hung in the air like poison. Nia felt it in her chest, heavy and suffocating. They were saying she didn't belong here because she went to public school. Because kids who looked like her, who went to schools like hers, weren't supposed to live in neighborhoods like this. "So what?" Nia shot back. "Is it illegal to go to public school now?" "Watch your attitude," Davidson warned. "Watch yours." The words burst out before Nia could stop them. She was tired, scared, angry, and done with being treated like a suspect when all she'd done was walk home. "You're harassing me for no reason. You're going through my stuff without cause." "That's it," Mills said, reaching for his handcuffs. "You're coming with us." "What? No." Nia stumbled backward, but there was nowhere to go. Officers surrounded her on all sides. I didn't do anything. You're being detained for suspicious behavior and failure to cooperate with a police investigation, Mills said, his voice flat and official, like he was reading from a script. This is unbelievable. Mrs. Rodriguez had joined the crowd now, her teenage son beside her, both filming. Someone call her parents. Does anyone have their number? I want a lawyer, Nia said, remembering another thing her parents had taught her. I'm 17. I want my parents. I want a lawyer. You'll get all that at the station, Davidson said. At the station? They were actually going to arrest her? Nia felt dizzy. This couldn't be happening. This couldn't be real. Her hands were still up, phone still recording, when Mills grabbed her wrist and twisted it behind her back. Ow, Nia cried out. That hurts. Stop resisting, Mills said, even though Nia wasn't fighting him at all. She was just standing there, frozen with fear and shock. The cold metal of the handcuffs clicked around one wrist, then the other. Nia had never felt anything like it. The metal was cold and tight, biting into her skin. Her phone clattered to the ground, the recording finally stopping. That's excessive force, someone in the crowd yelled. This is assault, another voice added. Everyone needs to back up now, one of the officers shouted, his hand moving to the weapon at his hip. This is official police business. If you don't disperse, you'll be arrested for obstruction. But the crowd didn't back up. If anything, more people came out. The woman from the corner house. The college student who rented the apartment above the garage 3 doors down. Even old Mr. Harrison with his walker shuffled out to his front porch, demanding to know what was happening. They all knew Nia. They'd all seen her 100 times. Walking to school. Helping Mrs. Chen carry her groceries. Playing with the Rodriguez kids in their front yard. She wasn't some stranger. She was their neighbor. You're making a huge mistake, Mr. Patel said, his voice shaking with anger. That girl's father is James Thompson, the mayor. You're harassing the mayor's daughter. Officer Davidson's head snapped up. What did you say? I said her father is Mayor Thompson. You know, your boss's boss. The person who controls the police budget? For the first time, Nia saw something flicker across Davidson's face. Uncertainty. Maybe fear. He looked at Mills, who had gone pale. That's not... Mills started, then trailed off. He looked at Nia. Really looked at her. Like he was seeing her for the first time. You're the mayor's daughter? Nia wanted to scream. She wanted to tell them that it shouldn't matter whose daughter she was. She should have been treated with respect regardless. But all she could manage was a quiet, bitter, yes. The street had gone quiet. Even the neighbors had stopped shouting. Everyone was watching the officers, waiting to see what they'd do now that they realized they'd just handcuffed the most powerful person in the city's teenage daughter. Davidson cleared his throat. Well, that doesn't change the fact that, are you kidding me right now? Mrs. Chen interrupted. Take those handcuffs off that child immediately. We were just doing our job, Mills said weakly. We had reports of suspicious activity. Suspicious activity? Mr. Patel laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. A black girl walking home is suspicious activity? You should be ashamed of yourselves. One of the other officers, a woman who'd arrived with the backup, stepped forward. Davidson, maybe we should... Don't tell me how to do my job, Davidson snapped. But his confidence was cracking. His eyes kept darting between Nia and the growing crowd. Nia's shoulders ached from having her arms twisted behind her back. The handcuffs were too tight. Her whole body was shaking. A mix of adrenaline and fear and anger she couldn't contain anymore. Can you please take these off? She asked quietly. They hurt. Mills looked at Davidson. Davidson looked at the crowd. Nobody moved. Take them off, Mrs. Rodriguez shouted. What's wrong with you? That's when Nia heard it. The sound of a car engine, different from the patrol cars, heavier, smoother. She couldn't turn her head with the officers surrounding her, but she heard the door open and close. Then she heard her father's voice. What exactly is going on here? The words were calm. Too calm, Nia knew that tone. It was the voice her father used when he was absolutely furious but trying to maintain control. She'd heard it exactly twice before in her life, and both times someone had ended up in serious trouble. The crowd parted. The officers shifted. And suddenly Nia could see him. James Thompson stood at the edge of the scene, still in his work clothes. A dark suit, tie slightly loosened, briefcase in one hand. He looked like he'd come straight from City Hall. His security detail flanked him. Two men in dark suits who were already scanning the situation with professional assessment. "Dad?" Nia's voice broke on the word, and suddenly the tears she'd been holding back started falling. She couldn't wipe them away with her hands cuffed behind her back, so they just rolled down her cheeks unchecked. Her father's eyes found hers, and something in his expression shifted. The careful control slipped for just a second, and Nia saw raw fear flash across his face. Then anger. Then something worse than anger. Cold, focused fury. Officer Davidson stepped forward. "Sir, you need to—" "I need to what?" Her father's voice could have cut glass. "I need to stand here and watch while 6 police officers handcuff my 17-year-old daughter in front of her own house." "We didn't know," Mills started. "You didn't know what?" "That she lived here? Multiple neighbors told you. You didn't know she was the mayor's daughter? That shouldn't matter. You didn't know she was a human being who deserves basic respect? That's the only thing that should have mattered." Davidson tried again. "Sir, with all due respect." "Respect?" James Thompson walked closer, his security detail matching his pace. "You want to talk to me about respect while my daughter is standing there in handcuffs? While her belongings are scattered across the sidewalk? While her neighbors had to come out and defend her because you decided a black girl walking home must be a criminal?" "It was a misunderstanding," Mills said. "A misunderstanding." Her father repeated the words slowly, like he was tasting them and finding them rotten. "Is that what we're calling racial profiling now?" Officer Davidson's face flushed red. "Now hold on, this had nothing to do with race. We were responding to reports." "What reports?" Her father cut him off. "I want to know exactly what reports you were responding to that made you stop my daughter. What crime was committed? What description were you working from?" Silence. The officers looked at each other. "That's what I thought," James Thompson said. "There were no reports. There was no crime. There was just a young black girl walking through a nice neighborhood, and you couldn't imagine she belonged here." He moved past the officers and stood directly in front of Nia. Gently, carefully, he reached out and wiped the tears from her cheeks with his thumb. "Are you hurt?" he asked softly. Nia shook her head even though it was a lie. She wasn't physically hurt, but inside she felt broken and humiliated and scared in a way she'd never been before. "Take the handcuffs off my daughter," her father said, turning back to the officers. It wasn't a request. "Mayor Thompson, I think we should discuss—" "I said take them off now." Mills fumbled for his keys, hands shaking as he unlocked the handcuffs. The metal fell away and Nia brought her arms forward, rubbing her wrists where the cuffs had left red marks. Her father saw the marks. His jaw clenched so tight Nia thought he might crack his teeth. "Badge numbers," he said quietly. "All of you. Badge numbers and names. Now." The officers recited them one by one while one of the security detail men wrote everything down in a small notebook. James Thompson pulled out his phone and called someone. "Chief Morrison? It's James Thompson. I need you on Riverside Avenue immediately." "Yes, right now." "I don't care if you're in a meeting. My daughter was just detained and handcuffed by 6 of your officers for walking home in her own neighborhood. You have 5 minutes to get here." He ended the call and looked at the crowd of neighbors, many still recording on their phones. "I want copies of all those videos," he said. "Every single one. My office will be in touch." Then he turned to Nia, wrapped his arm around her shoulders and held her while she finally let herself cry. The 5 minutes felt like an eternity. Nia stood there with her father's arm around her shoulders, trying to stop crying but finding it impossible. Every time she thought she was done, another wave would hit her. She felt embarrassed crying in front of all these people, in front of the officers who'd done this to her. But she couldn't seem to make it stop. Her father held her closer, one hand rubbing her arm in that way he'd done since she was little. "It's okay," he murmured. "Let it out. You're safe now, but was she?" Nia looked at the 6 officers standing around awkwardly, some avoiding eye contact, others watching her father with barely concealed nervousness. These were the people supposed to protect her. These were the people she was supposed to trust. And they'd treated her like a criminal. The neighbors hadn't left. If anything, the crowd had grown larger. Nia recognized almost everyone now. The Chens, the Patels, the Rodriguez family, Mr. Harrison still clutching his walker on his porch. Others from streets nearby had wandered over, drawn by the commotion. At least 30 people stood witness to what had happened, their phones capturing everything. A black sedan came flying down the street, moving fast enough to make heads turn. It screeched to a stop behind the patrol cars, and Police Chief Morrison jumped out before the car even stopped completely. He was a big man, barrel-chested and gray-haired, wearing his full-dress uniform. His face was already red when he approached, and it got redder when he saw Nia's tear-streaked face and her father's cold expression. "Mayor Thompson," Morrison began, slightly out of breath. "I came as fast as I could." "What's the situation?" "The situation," James Thompson said, his voice dangerously quiet, "is that 6 of your officers detained my 17-year-old daughter, handcuffed her, searched her belongings, and ignored multiple neighbors who vouched for her identity, all because she was walking home from her volunteer work at the community center." Chief Morrison's eyes widened. He looked at Nia, at the officers, at her scattered belongings still lying on the sidewalk. "Is this true?" Officer Davidson stepped forward. "Chief, we were responding to—" "I'm asking the mayor," Morrison cut him off. "Mayor Thompson? It's all true. And it's all recorded." James gestured to the crowd. "At least 20 phones captured the entire incident. Would you like to watch?" Mrs. Chen walked over, her phone still in hand. "I got it from the beginning, Mayor Thompson. From when they first stopped her." "Thank you, Mrs. Chen. The city attorney will be in touch to get copies of all recordings." Her father looked at the police chief. "This wasn't a mistake, Tom. This was racial profiling, plain and simple. My daughter told them repeatedly who she was, where she lived. Her neighbors confirmed it. But none of that mattered because your officers saw a black teenager in a hoodie and made assumptions. We had reports of break-ins in the area." Mills tried to explain again, his voice shaky. "What reports?" Chief Morrison demanded. "When? What address?" Mills looked at Davidson. Davidson looked at his feet. "There were no reports," Mr. Patel called out from the crowd. "They're lying. I'm on the neighborhood watch committee. We haven't had a break-in in this area in over 2 years." Morrison's face went from red to purple. "Is that true, Davidson?" The silence that followed was answer enough. "Let me get this straight," the chief said slowly. "You stopped this young woman with no probable cause, no reports, no reason whatsoever?" "She looked suspicious," Davidson muttered. "Suspicious how?" James Thompson's voice cracked like a whip. "Describe to me what looked suspicious. Was it the backpack full of schoolbooks? The community center volunteer shirt she's wearing? Or was it just the color of her skin?" Davidson's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. Nia's mother's car pulled up then, tires squealing as she parked half on the curb. Angela Thompson burst out of the driver's seat, her work badge still clipped to her blazer. She was a lawyer for the state attorney's office, and right now she looked every bit the prosecutor she was. "Nia." She ran to her daughter, pulling her into a hug so tight Nia could barely breathe. "Baby, are you okay?" "Are you hurt?" "I'm okay, Mom," Nia said, even though she wasn't sure that was true. "I'm not hurt." Angela pulled back and looked at Nia's wrists where the red marks from the handcuffs were still visible. Her expression went ice cold. "Who put handcuffs on my daughter?" Officer Mills raised his hand slightly like a kid in class admitting to something he knew was wrong. "You handcuffed a minor without cause?" Angela's lawyer voice was even scarier than her mom voice. "Did you contact her parents? Did you read her rights? Did you have any legal justification whatsoever?" "Ma'am, she was being uncooperative. She was recording you, which is her legal right. She was standing still, which is compliance. She answered your questions, which is cooperation." Angela counted off on her fingers. What part of any of that justified restraints? Mills had no answer for that either. Chief Morrison looked like he wanted to disappear into the ground. "Mayor Thompson, Mrs. Thompson, I sincerely apologize. This is completely unacceptable. I assure you there will be a full investigation." "You're right. There will be," James interrupted, "and it won't be an internal investigation. I want an independent review by the state police. I want these officers suspended immediately pending that review. And I want a complete audit of your department's stops and searches for the past 5 years, broken down by race. Mayor, that's non-negotiable." Her father's voice left no room for argument. "This isn't just about my daughter, Tom. How many other kids have your officers stopped for looking suspicious? How many other families have been harassed in their own neighborhoods? This ends now." The crowd murmured in agreement. Several people called out their support. Nia felt strange standing there while everyone talked about her like she wasn't present. She looked at her belongings scattered on the sidewalk, her textbooks, her homework, her laptop sitting on the hood of the patrol car. Her whole life dumped out for everyone to see because two officers couldn't imagine she belonged in her own neighborhood. "Can I get my stuff?" she asked quietly. Everyone stopped talking. Her father looked at her, and his angry expression softened. "Of course, honey." He bent down and started gathering her things, carefully placing each item back in her backpack. Her mother helped, checking the laptop for damage, collecting the papers that had blown into the grass. Chief Morrison stood there awkwardly, then he too crouched down to help. Officer Davidson moved toward the backpack, but James Thompson held up a hand. "Don't. You've touched her belongings enough." Davidson stepped back like he'd been slapped. When everything was collected, Angela zipped up the backpack and handed it to Nia. "Let's go home, baby." But James Thompson wasn't done. He turned to face all 6 officers, his expression harder than Nia had ever seen it. "I need you all to understand something," he said. "My daughter is not special because she's the mayor's daughter. She's special because she's a human being who deserves to be treated with dignity and respect. Every teenager in this city deserves that. Every person deserves that." He paused, looking each officer in the eye. "What happened here today wasn't just wrong. It was a betrayal of everything your badge is supposed to represent. You're meant to protect people, not terrorize them. You're supposed to serve the community, not profile it based on skin color." Officer Mills looked like he might cry. Davidson still wouldn't make eye contact. The other 4 officers stood stiff and silent. "Chief Morrison, I want them off the streets tonight. Desk duty at minimum until the investigation is complete." "Yes, sir," Morrison said immediately. "And I want every officer in this city to undergo mandatory bias training, real training, not some 4-hour seminar where they sleep in the back row. I want psychologists. I want community leaders. I want people who have been on the receiving end of racial profiling to tell their stories." "We'll make it happen," Morrison promised. "You will. Because if this happens again to anyone in this city, there will be consequences, budget consequences, personnel consequences, whatever it takes to make sure every resident can walk down their own street without fear." James looked at the crowd of neighbors who had stood up for his daughter. "Thank you. All of you. You didn't have to come out here, but you did. You spoke up when it mattered. That's what community means." Mrs. Chen wiped her eyes. "We look out for each other, Mayor. That's what neighbors do." "That's what police should do too," he replied. He put his arm around Nia again and they started walking toward their house. Angela walked on Nia's other side, her hand on her daughter's back. The security detail followed at a respectful distance. Behind them, Nia heard Chief Morrison tearing into the officers, his voice rising with every word. "What were you thinking? Do you have any idea what you've done? This is national news by tomorrow morning." Nia didn't look back. She kept her eyes forward, on her house at the end of the street. The house with the mayor's residence sign in front, the one the officers must have driven past to get to where they stopped her. They had to have seen it. They just didn't believe a black girl could live there. As they walked up the driveway, Nia's younger brother opened the front door. 12-year-old Marcus took one look at Nia's tear-stained face and ran to her. "What happened? Are you okay?" "I'm okay," Nia said, hugging him. "I'm home now." Inside, the house felt like a sanctuary. Her mother locked the door behind them like that could keep the world out. Her father set down his briefcase and pulled out his phone. "I need to make some calls," he said. "This is going to be all over the news in an hour, and I want our statement out first." "Not yet," Angela said firmly. "First, we take care of Nia. Business comes after family." James looked at his wife, then at his daughter. He put the phone down. "You're right. Business can wait." They went to the living room, and Nia collapsed on the couch. Her whole body ached like she'd run a marathon. Her head throbbed. Her wrists still hurt where the handcuffs had been. Her mother sat next to her, gently taking her hands and examining her wrists more closely. "Do you want to go to the hospital? Get checked out?" "No," Nia said quickly. "I just want to stay here." "Okay, we'll stay here." Marcus brought her a glass of water. Her father sat in the chair across from her, elbows on his knees, head in his hands. "I'm sorry," he said finally. Nia looked at him, confused. Why are you sorry? You didn't do anything. I'm sorry this happened to you. I'm sorry I wasn't there sooner. I'm sorry that being my daughter didn't protect you from experiencing what thousands of other black kids experience every day. It's not your fault, Dad. Maybe not. But it's my responsibility to fix it. He looked up at her, and Nia saw something in his eyes she'd rarely seen before. Her father looked scared. When I got the call that police had stopped you, when my security detail said you were surrounded by officers, I've never been so terrified in my life. Angela squeezed Nia's hand. We talk to you about these situations, we prepare you, but you're never really prepared, because it shouldn't happen at all. They didn't believe me, Nia said quietly. I told them who I was, where I lived, everything. The neighbors told them, but they didn't believe any of us. Not until you showed up, Dad. Not until they realized who you were. That's the part that makes me angriest, James said. That my position mattered more than your humanity. That my title was more convincing than your word. They sat in silence for a moment. Outside, Nia could hear voices. Neighbors still gathered on the street, probably discussing what had happened. Tomorrow everyone would know. The story would spread through social media, through news outlets. Her worst moment would become public property. What happens now, she asked. Her father's expression hardened. Now we make sure this never happens to anyone else. We change the system. We hold people accountable. We make this mean something. But in that moment, sitting on her couch with her family around her, Nia just felt tired. Tired and scared and angry all at once. She'd been walking home. That's all she'd been doing. Walking home in her own neighborhood. And somehow, that had been enough to make her a suspect. Nia didn't sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the officers surrounding her, felt the cold metal of the handcuffs, heard Davidson's voice demanding to search her bag. At 3 a.m, she gave up trying and sat by her bedroom window, watching the street below. It looked so peaceful in the darkness. The same street where just hours ago she'd been treated like a criminal. How was she supposed to walk down that sidewalk again? How was she supposed to leave her house without wondering if someone would stop her, question her, doubt her right to exist in her own space? Her phone buzzed. She'd turned off notifications around midnight when they became overwhelming, but she couldn't help checking now. Hundreds of messages. Thousands of mentions on social media. The videos had gone viral, just like her father predicted. She scrolled through the comments. Most were supportive, outraged on her behalf. But some weren't. Some said she should have just complied. Some said the officers were just doing their jobs. Some said if she'd been respectful, nothing would have happened. Those comments hurt the most because they implied this was somehow her fault. Like she could have done something different to prevent being profiled for the color of her skin. A soft knock on her door made her look up. Come in. Her mother entered, wearing her robe, carrying 2 mugs of tea. Couldn't sleep either? No. Nia took one of the mugs. Have you seen the videos? Unfortunately, yes. Angela sat on the edge of Nia's bed. They're everywhere. CNN, Fox, all the major networks. Your father's phone has been ringing nonstop. What's he saying? Right now, he's still making calls. The governor called. The attorney general. Half the city council. Everyone wants to know what happened and what we're going to do about it. Nia sipped her tea. It was chamomile, the kind her mother always made when she couldn't sleep. What are we going to do about it? That depends partly on you, baby. This is your story. You get to decide how much you want to share, how involved you want to be. You don't owe anyone anything. But that wasn't quite true, and they both knew it. This was bigger than Nia now. Those videos weren't just showing what happened to the mayor's daughter. They were showing Ned to countless black teenagers every single day, except most of them didn't have a mayor for a father or a state attorney for a mother. Most of them didn't have neighbors with cameras ready to defend them. I want to do something, Nia said. I don't know what yet, but I can't just let this be for nothing. Her mother smiled sadly. You're so much like your father. Is that a good thing? Usually. Sometimes it means you take on too much weight. trying to fix things that shouldn't be yours to fix. You're allowed to just be a kid who had something terrible happen to her. But I'm not just a kid, am I? Not anymore. Nia looked at her phone at the thousands of people watching her story. Everyone knows now. Everyone's watching to see what happens next. Then we make sure what happens next matters. The sun came up slowly, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Nia watched it through her window, the same sun that would shine on her walk to school today. Except she wasn't sure she wanted to leave the house. At breakfast, her father looked like he'd aged 5 years overnight. Dark circles under his eyes, tie hanging loose, papers spread across the kitchen table. Press conference at 10, he said without looking up. I'm announcing the independent investigation and the mandatory training programs. The city council is having an emergency meeting this afternoon. What about the officers? Nia asked. Suspended with pay pending the investigation. Standard procedure, that's it. They get paid to sit home while someone investigates what we all saw on camera. James rubbed his face. It's what the union contract requires. But trust me, honey, if the investigation finds what I know it will find, they won't have jobs to come back to. And if it doesn't? If they get cleared? Her father finally looked at her. Then I'll find another way. I promise you, Nia, there will be accountability. But promises felt empty right now. Nia had seen too many videos of police officers doing wrong things, followed by promises of investigations, followed by nothing changing. The system protected itself. It always had. I want to come to the press conference, she said. Both her parents looked at her in surprise. Nia, you don't have to do that, her mother said gently. We can handle the media. You should rest, maybe take a few days off school. I can't hide. Everyone already knows what happened. If I don't show up, people will make up their own narrative about what I'm thinking and feeling. I want to tell my own story. James and Angela exchanged a look, the kind of silent communication parents perfected after years of marriage. Are you sure? Her father asked. The media can be brutal. They'll ask hard questions. Some people won't be kind. I'm sure. This happened to me. I should be part of how we talk about it. 2 hours later, Nia stood backstage at City Hall, listening to the murmur of reporters gathering in the press room. She'd changed 3 times before settling on a simple blue dress and cardigan. Her mother had helped her with her hair, pulling it back in a neat bun. She looked like she was going to church, not facing a room full of journalists who would broadcast her story to millions of people. You ready? Her father asked, appearing beside her in his full suit and tie. Every inch the mayor. No, but I'm doing it anyway. He smiled. That's courage, Nia. Doing the hard thing even when you're scared. They walked out together. Camera flashes exploded like fireworks. Microphones crowded the podium. Nia counted at least 15 different news outlets, plus local reporters, bloggers, and what looked like streaming platforms. Her father spoke first, his voice strong and clear. He laid out the facts of what happened, announced the independent investigation, detailed the new training programs and oversight committees. He used words like unacceptable and systemic failure and immediate reform. Then he stepped aside and gestured to Nia. My daughter would like to say a few words. The room went silent. Nia stepped up to the podium, adjusting the microphone down to her height. Every eye in the room focused on her. Every camera pointed at her face. This was it. Her chance to say something that mattered. She pulled out the paper where she'd written notes at 4 a.m, then realized she didn't need it. She knew what she wanted to say. Yesterday I was walking home from the community center where I volunteer, she began, and was surprised at how steady her voice sounded. I wasn't breaking any laws. I wasn't doing anything suspicious. I was just being a black teenager in a nice neighborhood, and apparently that was enough to make me a suspect. She told the story, not just the facts, but the feelings. The fear when the patrol car pulled up. The humiliation of having her belongings searched on the sidewalk. The pain of the handcuffs. The moment when she realized that nothing she said mattered, because the officers had already decided who she was based on how she looked. I'm lucky, she continued. I have parents who could protect me. I live in a neighborhood where people came out with cameras and vouched for me. My father has the power to demand change. But most black teenagers don't have those advantages. Most of them just have to survive these encounters and hope they don't become another hashtag. Someone in the press pool sniffled. Nia saw several reporters wiping their eyes. I don't want this to just be about me, she said. I don't want people to care about this because I'm the mayor's daughter. I want people to care because this happens every single day to kids who look like me, who have every right to walk down their streets without fear. She paused, gathering her thoughts for the most important part. My father is announcing reforms, and that's good. But reforms aren't enough if we don't change hearts and minds. If we don't make people see that black teenagers in hoodies are not threats. We're students, we're volunteers, we're people. We belong everywhere we choose to be. The question started immediately. A reporter from the national news asked if she was angry at the officers. Of course I'm angry, Nia said. But I'm more sad than angry. Sad that we live in a world where this happened. Sad that it will probably happen again tomorrow to someone else. Sad that my little brother is watching this and learning that even being the mayor's son might not keep him safe. Another reporter asked if she thought the officers were racist. I don't know their hearts, Nia replied carefully. But I know their actions were racist. I know they saw my skin color before they saw my humanity. Whether that makes them racist people or people who did a racist thing, I'm not sure there's a difference that matters. A local blogger asked what she wanted to see happen. Real accountability. Not paid suspension. Not a slap on the wrist. These officers abused their power and violated my rights. They should lose the privilege of wearing that badge. She looked directly at the camera. And I want every police department in this country to ask themselves, how many teenagers have we stopped for no reason? How many families have we terrorized? How many lives have we made harder just because of the color of someone's skin? The press conference went on for another 30 minutes. Her father fielded more questions about policy and procedures. Her mother, who'd joined them on stage, spoke about legal protections and constitutional rights. But it was Nia's words that would make headlines. It was her face that would be on magazine covers. It was her story that people would share. Afterward, in her father's office, Nia collapsed into a chair. That was the hardest thing I've ever done. You were incredible, her mother said. Articulate, powerful, authentic. Do you think it will matter? Will anything actually change? James came around his desk and knelt in front of his daughter. Change doesn't happen all at once. It happens in moments, in conversations, in people deciding to do better. What you did today, speaking your truth, showing your humanity, that's how change begins. But will those officers actually face consequences? Yes, I'll make sure of it. His phone rang. He glanced at the screen and answered. Chief Morrison, thank you for calling back. Nia watched her father's face as he listened. She saw his expression shift from neutral to satisfied to something like grim pleasure. That's excellent news, he said. Yes, I'll make a statement this afternoon. Thank you, Tom. He hung up and looked at Nia. Officers Davidson and Mills have been terminated, effective immediately. The other 4 are on probation pending the completion of the investigation. Terminated. They're fired? The evidence was overwhelming. The chief reviewed all the videos, read the witness statements. He said there was no path forward for them to continue wearing the badge. The union will probably fight it, but we have everything documented. It should have felt like victory, but Nia just felt tired. Good, that's good. There's more, her father continued. 3 other families have come forward with similar stories. Black teenagers stopped in their neighborhoods, questioned without cause, treated as suspects. They've been scared to speak up before, but after seeing your press conference, they contacted the police chief directly. Nia's stomach sank. 3 other families? Just in our city? Just in the past 6 months. Who knows how many more there are who haven't come forward. This was bigger than her. It always had been. Nia was just one face on a problem that stretched back generations and across the entire country. Her phone buzzed with a text from her best friend Destiny. You were amazing on TV. Everyone at school is talking about it. You're a hero. But Nia didn't feel like a hero. She felt like someone who'd had something horrible happen to her and was trying to make sense of it. Over the next few days, as the story continued to dominate headlines, think pieces were written, debates were held on news programs. People she'd never met had opinions about what she should have done, how she should have acted, whether she was brave or foolish for speaking out. The Riverside Police Department announced sweeping reforms. Every officer would undergo a minimum of 40 hours of bias training. The city established a civilian oversight board with real power to investigate complaints. Body cameras became mandatory for all officers on patrol. Stop and search data would be published monthly. Broken down by race and neighborhood, it wasn't enough. Nothing could undo what happened or guarantee it would never happen again. But it was something. It was a start. On Sunday morning, Nia finally walked down Riverside Avenue again. Her mother had offered to drive her anywhere she wanted to go, but Nia needed to do this. She needed to reclaim her street, her neighborhood, her sense of safety in her own home. She wore the same navy hoodie, carried the same backpack, followed the same route she'd taken that terrible Tuesday afternoon. When she reached the spot where the officers had stopped her, she paused. Someone had placed flowers there, a small bouquet tied with a ribbon. A note attached read, "You belong here. Thank you for being brave." Nia picked up the flowers and kept walking, this time all the way home without anyone stopping her, questioning her, or doubting her right to be exactly where she was. 3 weeks after the incident, Nia stood in front of 50 police officers in the Riverside Police Department's training room. She'd never imagined she'd be back here, facing the people who were supposed to protect her, trying to help them understand what they'd gotten so wrong. Chief Morrison introduced her, his voice uncomfortable but respectful. "Officers, this is Nia Thompson. Many of you know her story. She's here today as part of your mandatory bias training to share her experience and perspective." Some officers looked at her with genuine curiosity. Others had their arms crossed, faces skeptical. A few wouldn't meet her eyes at all. Nia took a deep breath and started talking. "I want to begin by saying I don't hate police officers. My uncle is a cop in another city. I've grown up respecting the badge and what it's supposed to represent. But respect goes both ways, and that's what we need to talk about today." She showed the video of her encounter. Watching it again still made her chest tight, but she'd learned to breathe through the anxiety. When it finished, the room was silent. That's me at 17, scared out of my mind, wondering if I was about to become another name people would say at protests, all because I was walking home. And before anyone says I should have just complied, I did comply. I answered questions. I showed my school ID. I told them where I lived. I did everything right, and it still wasn't enough. An older officer raised his hand. "With respect, ma'am, officers have to make split-second decisions. Sometimes we get it wrong, but it comes from a place of trying to keep neighborhoods safe." "Safe for who?" Nia asked. "Your split-second decision made me feel less safe in my own neighborhood. Your split-second decision traumatized a 17-year-old girl who was just trying to get home. At what point do we admit that these split-second decisions follow a pattern of seeing black and brown people as threats first and citizens second?" The officer looked away. A younger woman in the back spoke up. "What would you have wanted those officers to do differently?" Finally, a good question. Nia had been thinking about this for weeks. First, don't stop me at all unless there's an actual reason. A real reason, not "she looked suspicious." If you must stop me, approach with respect, not suspicion. Explain what's happening and why. Listen when I speak. Believe me when I tell you who I am. And most importantly, see me as a human being first. She spent the next 2 hours talking with officers, answering questions, sharing her perspective. It was exhausting, having to explain her humanity over and over, but she could see some of them getting it. Some of them were actually listening. At the end, a middle-aged officer approached her. "My daughter is about your age. Today, watching that video, I realized I've been part of the problem. I've made assumptions based on how people look. I'm sorry for what happened to you, and I'm sorry it took something this public to make me examine my own biases." It wasn't much, but it was honest. Nia shook his hand. "Thank you for being willing to change." The training sessions became a regular thing. Nia spoke at the police academy, to veteran officers, to the leadership team. She was joined by other community members, other teenagers who'd had similar experiences, parents who'd had to explain to their children why being black meant following a different set of rules. But Nia knew that training alone wouldn't fix everything. They needed systemic change, and that meant getting involved in the actual policymaking process. Her father created a youth advisory board for police accountability, and Nia became its chair. 10 teenagers from across the city, representing different neighborhoods and backgrounds, meeting monthly with police leadership to discuss concerns and propose solutions. Their first recommendation was about school resource officers. Too many students felt surveilled and criminalized in their own schools. The board proposed new protocols. Officers would focus on actual threats, not dress code violations or minor disputes. They'd receive specialized training in adolescent development and de-escalation, and students would have a clear process for filing complaints. The police chief initially resisted, But Nia's father backed the youth board completely. The protocols were implemented by the start of the next semester. At school, Nia noticed she'd become someone different. Before the incident, she was just another student, focused on grades and college applications. Now people looked at her as an activist, a leader, someone who'd stood up to power and won. It was weird and uncomfortable sometimes. She didn't ask to be a symbol. She just wanted justice for what happened to her. But destiny pointed out something important one day at lunch. You know how many kids told me they felt braver speaking up about stuff because of what you did? Rachel reported that creepy substitute teacher. Kevin told his parents about the racist comments his coach makes. You showed everyone that young people's voices matter. Maybe that was the real change. Not just the policy reforms or the officer terminations, but the shift in how young people saw themselves and their power to demand better. Nia's college essay almost wrote itself. She didn't focus on the trauma of the incident itself, but on what came after, how she channeled fear into action, turned a personal violation into a community conversation, transformed her worst day into a catalyst for change. I learned that justice isn't passive, she wrote. It doesn't happen because we wish for it or wait for it. Justice is active. It requires people willing to speak uncomfortable truths, to make those in power uncomfortable enough to change. She applied to 11 schools with that essay. By March, she'd been accepted to 9 of them, including 3 Ivy League universities. Her top choice was a small liberal arts college with a strong social justice program and a reputation for producing activists and change-makers. But before she could think too much about next year, there was still work to do this year. In April, the independent investigation released its findings. The report was damning. It found that black residents were 3 times more likely to be stopped by Riverside police than white residents, even though they made up only 15% of the population. Officers were twice as likely to search black residents during traffic stops. And use of force incidents disproportionately involved people of color. The report made 17 recommendations for reform. The city council voted to implement all of them. Nia attended the council meeting where the vote happened, sitting in the gallery with other members of the youth board. When the final vote came down, unanimous approval, the room erupted in applause. Her father caught her eye from his seat at the council table and nodded. This was what they'd been fighting for. Real documented change that would affect everyone, not just her. After the meeting, a reporter asked Nia if she felt vindicated. I feel hopeful, she said. But vindication isn't the goal. Making sure this doesn't happen to other kids is the goal. These reforms are a good start, but we have to stay vigilant. Systems don't change themselves. People have to keep pushing. As spring turned to summer, Nia found herself speaking at community events, youth conferences, even a state legislative hearing on police reform. She still got nervous before speaking publicly, still felt that tightness in her chest when she had to relive that October afternoon. But she'd learned that courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was acting. Despite the fear, because the cause was worth it, the 3 families who'd come forward with their own stories of being profiled became Nia's friends and allies. Together, they pushed for a citizen-led review board with the power to investigate complaints and recommend discipline. After months of negotiations with the police union, the board was established with real teeth. 5 citizens elected by the community, serving 2-year terms, with subpoena power and access to all department records. Nia applied to be on the board despite her age. I'll be 18 by the time. Me it's seated, she argued at the city council hearing. I have first-hand experience with the system's failures, and I represent thousands of young people in this city who deserve a voice in police accountability. The council voted 4-3 to allow teenagers to serve on the board if elected. Nia ran unopposed for one of the seats and won with 72% of the vote in her district. Her graduation came in June, on a sunny afternoon that felt like a lifetime away from that terrible October day. She wore her navy blue gown and walked across the stage to accept her diploma, her father beaming from the audience, her mother crying happy tears. The valedictorian speech mentioned her by name, calling her an inspiration and a reminder that one person's courage could change a community. Nia felt her cheeks flush with embarrassment and pride. After the ceremony, as families gathered for photos and hugs, Mrs. Chen found her in the crowd. I'm so proud of you, she said, pulling Nia into a hug. Look at everything you've accomplished. I couldn't have done any of it without you and the other neighbors who stood up for me that day. You taught me what community really means. Mr. Patel joined them, camera in hand. Can I get a photo of our neighborhood hero?
I'm not a hero, Nia protested.
I just didn't want what happened to me to happen to anyone else. That's exactly what makes you a hero, he said, snapping the picture. That summer, before leaving for college, Nia organized a community forum on police community relations. Over 200 people attended, residents, officers, city officials, activists. They sat in circles, sharing stories, asking hard questions, working through difficult conversations about race, power, safety, and trust. Officer Davidson and Mills didn't attend, of course. They were both gone, their terminations upheld after the union's appeal failed. But several other officers who'd been there that day came to the forum, including the female officer who'd suggested taking off Nia's handcuffs. During a break, that officer approached Nia. I've wanted to apologize to you for months. I should have spoken up sooner. I should have stopped my colleagues before things escalated. I'm sorry I didn't protect you the way I was supposed to. Nia appreciated the apology, but she had a question. Why didn't you speak up sooner? The officer looked uncomfortable. Fear, I guess. Fear of going against my fellow officers. Fear of being seen as disloyal. But watching what you've done since, the courage you've shown, it made me realize that silence is a choice and it's the wrong one. What are you doing differently now? Nia asked. Everything. I speak up in briefings when I hear bias. I question stops that don't make sense. I filed 3 complaints last month about colleagues who were profiling residents. It's made me unpopular in the department, but I can look at myself in the mirror now. That conversation gave Nia hope. Real change wasn't just about policies and procedures. It was about individuals choosing to do better, even when it was hard, even when it cost them something. On her last night in Riverside before leaving for college, Nia walked down Riverside Avenue one more time. It was a warm August evening, the air thick with the scent of honeysuckle and fresh-cut grass. She passed the spot where she'd been stopped, where everything had changed. The flowers were long gone, but someone had planted a small garden there, right in the median strip. A plaque read, "In honor of all who stand up for justice, may we build a community where everyone belongs." Nia smiled. This was what transformation looked like. Not just punishment for those who did wrong, but proactive creation of something better. Not just addressing one incident, but changing the culture that allowed such incidents to happen. Her phone buzzed with a text from her father. Almost ready to go? She'd be moving into her dorm tomorrow, starting a new chapter. But this chapter, the one that began with fear and ended with purpose, would always be part of her story. Ready, she texted back. As she walked home, Nia thought about everything that had changed in 10 months. Officers fired, policies reformed, a community awakened to systemic problems, young people empowered to demand better, and one teenage girl who learned that her voice, her story, her refusal to accept injustice could matter. She'd had to walk through fire to learn those lessons. She'd had to face her worst fears and her deepest vulnerabilities in front of the whole world. It hadn't been fair. It hadn't been right, but she'd survived it. More than survived. She'd transformed it into something meaningful. When Nia reached her house, her family was waiting on the porch. Her father, her mother, her brother Marcus. They'd all been changed by that October afternoon. All learned hard truths about the world they lived in. But they'd also learned about resilience, about the power of speaking truth, about the importance of turning pain into purpose. Ready for tomorrow? Her mother asked. Nia looked at her family, at her home, at the street where she'd been made to feel like she didn't belong. Now she knew with absolute certainty that she belonged everywhere she chose to be. No badge, no bias, no system could take that away from her. I'm ready, she said. And she was, ready for college, ready for the next fight, ready to continue the work of building a more just world. The incident that had threatened to break her had instead made her stronger, more determined, more clear about her purpose. She wasn't just the mayor's daughter anymore. She wasn't just another teenager walking home. She was Nia Thompson, activist, leader, voice for the voiceless, and believer in a world where everyone could walk down their street without fear. That October afternoon had tried to teach her that she was less than, that her safety and dignity were conditional. But she'd learned a different lesson entirely. She'd learned that one person's courage could light a spark, that speaking truth to power could change systems, and that justice delayed didn't have to mean justice denied. The work wasn't finished. It would never be finished. But tonight, on the eve of a new beginning, Nia allowed herself to feel proud of how far they'd come. Proud of herself, proud of her community, proud of everyone who'd stood up and said, not anymore. Not here, not to our kids. Tomorrow she'd go to college. Next month, the Civilian Review Board would hold its first meeting. Next year there would be new challenges, new battles, new work to do. But tonight she was just a girl who'd survived something terrible and turned it into something beautiful. And that was enough.